Hello, everyone. Good afternoon from the West Coast and good morning from Asia. Thank you for coming to the second event of UCLA's Taiwan in the World Speaker Series. I'm Shih Dai, organizer of today's lecture. I'm currently a postdoctoral researcher at UCLA Asia Pacific Center. Under the leadership of Professor Ming Zhou, the Asia Pacific Center promotes research on topics related to inter-Asian and trans-Pacific studies. Our center's Taiwan in the World program is supported by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Taiwan and TICO Los Angeles. The Taiwan in the World program is part of our center's Taiwan Studies program. It aims to broaden academic conversations on issues related to Taiwan and build an international community of scholars well versed with Taiwanese culture and society. Please feel free to subscribe to our center's newsletter so you can be updated with our future events on Taiwan studies and other activities in our center. I would like to thank our center staff, Executive Director Elizabeth Leister and Assistant Director Aaron Miller for their support in organizing this wonderful event. Today's lecture is moderated by Dr. Stella Liu. Dr. Liu is Assistant Professor in Gender and Politics at the University of Edinburgh. Her research focuses on cross-national comparisons of gender and politics, and she has published in several well-known journal outlets such as Politics and Gender and International Political Science Review. She teaches courses in understanding gender in the contemporary world, as well as gender, politics, and representation. Now, it's my great pleasure to yield the floor to Dr. Liu, who will introduce our speaker, clarify the ground rules, and later moderate the Q&A. Dr. Liu, please.
Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. Many thanks to Shi Chan for a very nice introduction. It's such an honor and privilege for me to be here today to chair and moderate this session. And thank you all so much for being with us and investing your time with us today. My name is Dr. Sarah Liu. I am a lecturer in gender and politics at the University of Edinburgh, and I'm the chair of today's forum. So today's event is organized by Asia Pacific Center's Taiwan Studies programs at UCLA, which is one of the most active and vibrant centers for the study of Taiwan in the United States, offering an array of public events, conferences, and lecture series, visiting scholar exchanges, new courses, and research fellowships and travel grants for faculty and students. So for more information about Asia Pacific Center Taiwan Studies program, please see the link in the chat. And today, as part of the Taiwan in the World series, we have an amazing talk on Taiwan for Her, Gender and Equality in Taiwan, where our speaker today, Dr. Weiting Wu, will speak about what Taiwan has achieved in terms of gender equality and marriage equality, and what factors explain Taiwan's progress, and more importantly, what challenges and difficulties women in Taiwan still face from an intersectional perspective. So our goal today is that we will learn about gender equality and inequality in Taiwan. Not only will we come away with some new knowledge, but perhaps also a new strategy to achieve gender equality in other contexts as well. Here is the format to give you an idea of what to expect. Dr. Wu will talk for about 35 to 40 minutes. While we listen to Dr. Wu, please make sure that your mic is muted. We also ask that you hold off your questions until the Q&A. And then the second half of our time today will open up the floor to give you an opportunity to ask specific questions that you've been thinking about, perhaps from Dr. Wu's talk. We encourage you to use the raise your hand function on the Zoom screen. However, if you're not able to speak, please also enter your questions in the chat box, which Shi Chan and I will both monitor. Does that sound good? Give me a thumbs up or not if sounds good. Yeah, okay. So great, let's get started with the introduction. I'm very delighted and honored to have Dr. Weiting Wu with us today. Dr. Wu is an associate professor and the director of the Graduate Institute for Gender Studies at Shih Hsin University. Her research focuses on social movement, gender politics, and state-society relations. She has published widely on gender-related topics including works on promoting gender mainstreaming in Taiwan, as well as strategies of women's groups in expanding political space in China. She has participated in gender movement in Taiwan since she was a college student, and she also joined the gender movement in China. She has also served as a deputy director as well as a consultant for a number of important women's organizations, such as the Garden of Hope Foundation and Crystal Foundation in Taiwan. She received her PhD from the Department of Political Science at City University of New York in the United States. Without further ado, why don't we get started? And let's give Dr. Weiting Wu a warm welcome.
Okay, hello everyone. It's great to meet you all online, and thank you very much for Dr. Ru's introduction. Yeah, and without further ado, I'm going to let me talk about. Can everyone see my PowerPoint?
Yeah, I can see it now.
Okay, great. Okay, it's my honor to share my analysis and observation and also participation of gender equity movement in Taiwan. So my conclusion for the achievement of gender equity movement in Taiwan is we actually achieved the silent feminist revolution. And I'm going to talk about my conclusion first. I think through the effort of gender equity movement for the past 30 years, Taiwan has achieved silent feminist revolution. The gender equity movement in Taiwan has confronted and negotiated with the state, while at the same time encountered attacks from the patriarchy society. Comparing to Asia countries, Taiwan has the highest female representatives rate in both local councils and the central level Congress. Taiwan is the first country in Asia which passed the Domestic Violence Prevention Act. Taiwan is also the first nation in Asia which recognized marriage equality right for same-sex couples. Combining strategies of confrontational social movement and the negatory state feminism, gender equity movement has utilized political opportunity and the social capital to transform the patriarchy society and the state. I borrow the definition from Sidney Taylor about political opportunity structure. When shifting political conditions open opportunities for disruption and the activities of social movements, in turn can alter political policies and the structures. As regarding the definition of social capital, I borrow the definition from Robert Putnam. Connections among individuals, social networks, and the norms of reciprocity and the trustworthiness that arise from them. During this process, there were at least two important political opportunities. First, when the DPP candidate Chen Shui-bian was elected to become the mayor of the Taipei City, which led to the establishment of the first mechanism of democratic governance with joint decision-making between government officials and the representatives from women's groups. Second, because of tragedies of Peng Wanru incident in 1996 and the Bai Xiaoyan incident in 1997, the Executive Yuan Committee of Women's Rights Promotion was established in 1997, which was the first central government women's policy mechanism of Taiwan. Women's activists act effectively facing the significant changes in the political opportunity structure and use their network with political figures to obtain political commitment of promoting gender-related policies. Whenever representatives from women's groups become committee members in decision-making mechanisms, they were created founding social capital, which made them become a battle group. At the same time, they would also reach out to feminist bureaucrats to build up bridging social capital. At the end of 2006, the Executive Yuan Women's Committee further procured each department to establish gender equality project teams and promoted gender mainstream plans. Since then, policies regarding women's rights in Taiwan have been promoted by various departments under the coordination of the Executive Yuan Women's Rights Committee. Due to the time limitation, I'm going to I can only share my observation of 3 gender-related policies. They are women's political participation, the campaign against gender violence, and the campaign for marriage equality. On November 13, 1996, the director of Department of Women's Affairs of the Democratic Progressive Party, the DPP, Peng Wanru, was raped and murdered in Kaohsiung. This tragedy had resulted in the significant progresses of women's political participation and the campaign against gender violence. Peng Wanru's incident turned out to be the major milestone of Taiwan's women's movement. Actually, it's very sad to say this conclusion. And during that time, I was a college student and also participated in the protest. On the last day of her life, Wanru promoted hardly for women's political participation when she went south to attend the DPP convention. On that day, the DPP finally made an important decision that in the future, whenever DPP's nominated seats are more than 4 candidates, 1 in 4 seats must be reserved for a woman. So I'm going to quickly show you some achievement of Taiwan regarding gender issues. The first one is our gender gap index. So Taiwan ranked 29th globally in gender equality. As you can see from this chart, the statistics of political empowerment is, it's very significant, and it's put us in a leading group globally. The second index is about the gender inequality index. Taiwan ranked 6th globally and the 1st in Asia in 2019. This chart is about the power decision-making and the influence. Taiwan's proportion of female legislators was 39.8 in 2019, and was more than 40% after the legislators of the 10th Legislative Yuan were elected in January 2020. According to World Bank statistics, female legislators accounted for less than 20% of the legislators in 44% of the 192 countries surveyed in 2019. If data from Taiwan is added to these statistics, Taiwan would rank 23rd worldwide and the 1st in Asia. Yeah, but because I guess most of you know, the international status of Taiwan block us to be shown in most statistics. And this chart is about the situation of domestic violence in Taiwan. In 2019, 63,902 cases of domestic violence in intimate relationships were reported. And of course, the majority victims were women. And this chart is about the marriage equality. Since same-sex marriage was legalized on May 24, 2019, as of the end of May 2020, a total of 4,087 same-sex couples have completed marriage registration, including 1,257 male couples and 2,830 female couples. During this time, a total of 251 same-sex couples were divorced, and the majority were male couples. So right now I'm going to focus on the interactions between the state and the gender equity movement in Taiwan. I'm going to talk about the issue of domestic violence first, and I will say the process to pass the Domestic Violence Prevention Act is the process of domestic violence to be viewed as family business to human rights issues. Women's groups and the female scholars began their effort to rescue and provide service for domestic violence victims. Ms. Deng Ruwen's murder her husband in 1993 has exposed the dark side of treating domestic violence as a family business to the public. It furthered women's organizations to take part in actions against domestic violence. However, it was until the Peng Wanru incident in 1996 and the Bai Xiaoyan incident in 1997, which led women's groups protest against government's inaction regarding women's safety issues, that the Legislative Yuan finally passed the Domestic Violence Prevention Act. However, when the Domestic Violence Prevention Act passed in 1998, Article 1 state the purpose of this law is to promote the harmony of the family. So you can see from this article, at that time, the Congress, they were still reluctant to pass the Domestic Violence Prevention Act. It was until March 2007, so it's almost 10 years later, when the Domestic Violence Prevention Act was amended for the first time, that the Article 1 revised as to prevent domestic violence and to protect victims' rights. Then the Domestic Violence Prevention Act was amended on 2007, 9, and 2015, 2020. Feminist agendas were gradually included in this act. For example, the support system for children exposed to the domestic violence, the revision of the definition of the domestic violence, cohabitation is no longer a requirement, and etc. Now I'm going to talk about the second issue regarding the political participation in Taiwan. And I would say the process of gender equity movement to promote women's participation is a process for female politicians being viewed as political base to meaningful participation. The Local Government Act specified in 1999 that a quarter of seats in local councils should be reserved for women. When the Constitution was amended in 2005, the electoral system for legislators was changed to 2 votes per election zone. Because of the efforts of women's groups, it was also provided that at least half of the cross-zone elected list of political parties must be made up of women. The inclusion of a designated percentage of political participation by women in the Constitution increased women's influence and the power in the Congress. In addition to promoting electoral system reforms, women's groups also utilize party competition in elections after the democratization. First, women's activists promoted a mechanism to include a relative higher gender quotas of nominations. Because of Peng Wanru's effort, DPP is the first political party which has promised a quarter gender quotas of nominations. Since the year 2000, women's groups have been asking presidential candidates to promise to nominate women for at least 1/4 of all cabinet heads. Women's groups also ask for an increase of female grand justice, female members of the control yuan, and the female members of the examination yuan. And now I'm going to talk about the process to promote marriage equality in Taiwan. And it's a process of homosexuality being viewed as abnormal and to finally gain the citizenship. In 1986, Qi Jiawei, the pioneer activist, began his action during the period of martial law to fight for marriage equality. Ms. Qi held an international conference and announced that he and his partner wanted to register as a married couple. The Taiwan Taipei District Court refused his request. Ms. Qi then went to the Legislative Yuan to submit his petition. According to the documents of the Legislative Yuan, which is our Congress, legislators discussed Ms. Qi's petition and reached the decision that homosexuality is abnormal and homosexuality should not violate other people's rights. In 1994, a transgender woman who is married to another woman asked the registration office to change her gender to female. The Ministry of the Interior did not know how to answer her and asked the Ministry of Justice to explain the law. The Ministry of Justice responded that marriage is for one man and one woman. The law does not allow same-sex marriage. After a long period of time of fighting by individuals for marriage equality, the feminist group Awakening Foundation, I was their Secretary General after I got my master's degree, joined these efforts and advocated for the right of civil union for both same-sex and heterosexual couples in 2006. In the same year, the DPP legislator Xiao Meiqin, and she is, our ambassador in United States right now, submitted the draft of the same-sex couple marriage law to the Legislative Yuan and gained endorsement from other 38 legislators. However, her draft was rejected by other legislators and could not even pass through her first reading. In 2011, Awakening Foundation and the Taiwan Alliance to Promote Civil Partnership Rights, I'm going to use TAPCPR to call them later, held a press conference together and announced their draft for the civil partnership system. These two groups also hosted 3 workshops in the northern, middle, and southern part of Taiwan to explain their plan for legalizing the diverse forms of families. In 2012, DPP legislator Yong Mei-nu submitted her proposal to revise the civil code to include same-sex couples to the Legislative Yuan, but the KMT Minister of the Justice Ministry opposed her proposal. As a result, her draft did not get a chance to be discussed in the Legislative Yuan. The entire marriage equality movement gained momentum when TAPCPR sent their 3 bills on the diversified family formation to the Legislative Yuan and sought the endorsement of lawmakers in 2013. These 3 draft laws that were proposed by the TAPCPR, namely the same-sex marriage bill, the bill about the civil partnership system, and the bill about the multiple-person family system, aim to grant every person in Taiwan the right to establish their own type of family. TAPCPR's actions immediately triggered the nerve of the patriarchy society. The League of Taiwan Guardians of Family was soon established in 2013. With their tremendous financial resources, the conservative counter-movement rapidly grew. LTGF organized a rally on November 13, 2013, and gathered more than 300,000 people in front of the presidential palace. At this rally, several ruling party politicians at that time, the KMT University presidents, and more than 15 entertainers attended. And their two slogans are "For the happiness of our next generation" and "One husband, one wife, one man, one woman." With its rapid spread of traditional media and the social media, LTGF had successfully triggered society's panic against same-sex marriage. LTGF also successfully allied with legislators, all of them from the ruling party at that time, the KMT. On October 31st, 2015, the DPP presidential candidate Tsai Ing-wen released a video on her Facebook page, pledging that "I'm Tsai Ing-wen, I support marriage equality." On October 16, 2016, a French teacher who taught French at the National Taiwan University since 1979 died after falling from 10th floor of his Taipei apartment. He was suffering from depression since his Taiwanese partner for 35 years died of cancer in 2015. Before this tragedy happened, he was dealing with a lawsuit against his partner's family since he did not have legal rights to the property they shared. His tragedy awakened the attention of the Legislative Yuan. However, with the KMT aligning itself with the conservative counter-movement and the society's fear of sexual liberation, the lawmaking process was stalled in the Legislative Yuan. It was not until May 24th, 2017, when Taiwan's Constitutional Court, which more than 2/3 of the Grand Justice appointed by the newly elected President Tsai Ing-wen, reached the landmark decision that marriage should be open to same-sex couples within 2 years, that the marriage equality movement move forward. So this is a title of this new act, and you can see the struggle between the society and the gender equity movement, because from the title of this new act, it didn't include like the term of marriage equality. So sorry about my long presentation. I'm going to quickly talk about the challenges we are facing right now. We still face all challenges like traditional gender rules, and young females still leave their jobs because of getting married and having children. While at the same time, we face new challenges. For example, the patriarchy society has learned from the strategies of state feminism and try to participate in the decision-making process of the state. And, they have enormous financial resource. So it's very easy for them to buy some advertisement in the traditional media and the social media. Also, social media has become a platform to furnish gender violence. It's an emerging issue in Taiwan. Let me show you some statistics to demonstrate the strong influence of traditional gender rules. I would say the most challenging for the young women in Taiwan right now will be the maternal war. As you can see from these statistics, after reaching a peak among the 25 to 29 age groups, women's labor force participation rate in Taiwan steadily decreases. So these the red line shows Taiwan's statistics comparing to Japan, United States, and the Republic of Korea. With lower participation among women about 50 and above than other major countries. What do I mean by maternal war? Pregnant women, working mothers, and even women of childbearing age may face the maternal ward. Gender stereotypes related to women's role in their family and the needing to take time off after birth and for childcare often place women at a disadvantage in their careers comparing to men and the fathers. Among women, disabled women face, extremely discrimination in the workplace. So disabled women have the lowest labor force participation rate and the highest unemployment rate out of all groups. The labor force participation rate of women with disabilities is 40.7%. And as you can see from this chart, men's labor force participation rate is higher than that of women in all groups. The biggest gap of 25.4 percentage points is among middle-aged and the senior citizens. This is another statistics to show the influence of traditional gender roles. On average, women spend 3 times the amount of time on unpaid work than their spouses or cohabitation partners. In 2019, married women aged 15 and above spend an average of 4.41 hours per day on unpaid work. So we call it a double work in Taiwan. So in order to foster a friendly working environment, gender equity movement actually try very hard. I think we spent at least 12 years to promote the act of gender equality in employment. And this act allow employees to apply for parental leave without pay. But at the same time, Taiwan also began incorporating parental leave allowance into social insurance benefits in May 2009. So as you can see from this chart, in 2019, there were over 85,000 cases of initially approved subsidies for parental leave without pay. And of course, the majority application is from women. And this chart is about women's disadvantaged situation in the economic field. In terms of specific industry categories, women accounted for nearly 40% of legal representatives in the service sector, which is higher than in the agriculture sector or industrial sector. And in terms of industry type, women accounted for at least 35% of companies' responsible persons in the service sector, which you can see from this chart, which with education accounted for largest proportion, followed by accommodation of food and service. And so that one is about private companies. How about women performers in public companies? You can see from this chart. In 2019, there were 2,396 female directors of public companies, only accounted for 13.7%. It's quite low. And how about women's performance in social organizations? In 2019, women accounted for 33. Oh, sorry, I didn't include this statistic in my PowerPoint. So women accounted for 33 of Farmers Association members, 49.5% of Fishermen Association members, and 49.2% of labor union members. However, you can see from this chart, when we examine the percentage of women as directors or supervisors, only the performance is okay when we talk about labor unions. So the percentage of female directors and supervisors in labor union increased the most, from 28.4% to 32.3%. However, still fell short of the 1/3 gender rule. But if you see the percentage in Farmers Association or Fishermen Association, the female directors or supervisors cannot even reach 5% of total. Yeah, okay. Thank you for your attention. Sorry about my quite long presentation.
Thank you so much, Weiting, for your wonderful presentation, which has given us an overview of gender development in Taiwan. And I also really appreciate that you've pointed out the challenges and obstacles that women still face in Taiwan. And I just want to reassure you that your presentation wasn't long. You are very well within the time frame. So good job. And now we would like to open up for Q&A from the audience. So if you have any questions or comments, please contribute them in the Q&A box. You can see the Q&A option on the, well, I think it's on the lower part of your screen, on the lower right-hand side. So if you have any questions, we'll wait a few minutes. While we wait a few minutes for the audience to participate, I actually have a question for Weiting, if you all don't mind that I kick off on the Q&A here.
Sure.
So, like I said, I'm very impressed with your presentation, and I feel like I've learned a lot about gender development in Taiwan. And I was just wondering about what you spoke about marriage equality in Taiwan, because we know that Taiwan passed the equal marriage legislation a few years ago, right? Which is the first in Asia, right? It's obviously a very impressive achievement. But I also wonder, but then I think data also shows that more lesbian couples have gotten married than gay couples, right? So I was wondering if you could speak about that gender difference in terms of who's getting married, who's actually getting married. I wonder if you could speak a little bit about, how that indicates the gender development or the liberation of the sexes in Taiwan, right? If we look at who exactly is getting married at this point, because I think that could perhaps ties a little bit with the traditional gender expectations in Taiwan, right?
Yeah, sure. Good point. Yeah, and I guess it's like a global thing, like probably it's a stereotype that lesbians would prefer to get married and form their families. But I guess it's also a great sign to see more lesbian couples are willing to go to the registration office and then get married, because in the past, comparing to gay couples, lesbians are easier to hide in the society. So people, it's not so. It's more difficult for people to recognize lesbians. So I think it's a great sign for more lesbians are willing to come out to their own, original family, and then to come out to get married. And also it's very exciting after the passage of our marriage equality law, because I can see from my Facebook, they will host the ceremony and then share their joy to their friends. So right now there is a pool just I guess in the end of last year 2021, like the society is more willing to, or they already accept same-sex couples comparing to our struggles before the passage of marriage equality law. And also I didn't include in my presentation, our army, they used to host the union ceremony together, and the marriage ceremony together. And there were, I guess, like 3 couples in the army, and same-sex couples in the army, and they join the how to call it, the union marriage ceremony. And also our Ministry of Defense, they also show their pictures on our on their Facebook page. So I guess it's a good sign for the society to embrace different sexuality, also have their right to get married. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Weiting. We actually have a lot of questions coming in, so I'll just be reading off the questions one by one, if that's okay. So first we have a question from Shubham Gupta. I apologize if I pronounced your name wrong. But the question is, how do policies protecting women from domestic violence impact migrant care workers in Taiwan, who disproportionately tend to be women?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And I guess, I guess you probably know the situation in Taiwan well. So you asked a very good question. In Taiwan, migrant worker, the situation of a migrant worker does not protect they are not protected as we hope they are. So if they face domestic violence in their household, which also their workplace, they cannot use the act of prevention, the act to prevent domestic violence. They will be protected by the gender, the act of the Gender Equality Act of employment. So it's a different law system to protect their right. So as for migrant workers, it will be viewed as a dispute or violent in the workplace, not being viewed as a as a domestic violence. Yeah. Okay.
So it sounds like there's still a disparity, right, between how different types of women with different identities are treated in Taiwan, particularly when it comes to domestic violence protection. Okay,
right,
and we have another question. Yeah.
Okay, can I add one point? However, regarding migrant spouses, because after the year 1997, we have witnessed a group of migrant spouses from, most of them are from South Asia or Southeast Asia, and before the effort of gender equity movement, the migrant spouses also suffered disadvantages. And after the promotion of women's groups, one thing for migrant spouses is that if they got divorced before they were granted of citizenship, they needed to go back to their country in the past. And then after the effort of women's group, so if they were beaten up by their husbands, and in a situation that they did not get a citizenship yet, if they can show the proof of they were beaten up and get a protection order of domestic from the court, then they can get divorced and also get a citizenship and also get the children's custody at the same time in Taiwan. So now this is protected by the law. Yeah, sorry.
Thank you, Weiting. And we also have a question from Dora Sen, who says, thank you, Professor Weiting. I am also interested in learning about how Wei Pei fit into the big picture, given the intersectionality, not only gender, but also nationality and ethnicity. What are some challenges you foresee for this group, and also if there is any political opportunity for them?
Sorry, I didn't get the which group?
Wei Pei?
Wei Pei. Sorry, can you tell me Wei Pei is which group?
Wei Pei. Wei Pei.
Wei Pei. Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Migrant spouses.
As in migrant spouses. Yes.
Yeah, migrant spouses. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So it's actually a Mandarin. Sorry, I thought it's English. So migrant spouses. Which issue? Sorry.
How intersectionality plays a role, because it's not just about their gender, right? It's also about migrant spouses' nationality and ethnicity. So what challenges do you see them having, and also what political opportunities they might have?
Okay, yeah, great question, and it will probably take me 3 hours to explain their situation in Taiwan. It's also a long process of women's group to promote human rights for migrant spouses. So I guess Awakening Foundation is also the first women's group to promote migrant spouses' rights. I guess it's from I think it's from 2002. So you can see there is a time gap between we saw a group of migrant spouses came to Taiwan, and then women's groups found out they were violated by the state and of course by their husbands' families. So this is a long process. I can only because of a time limitation, I will only say the situation right now. The migrant spouses also still face cultural stigma. Like in Taiwan, we are promoting mother tongue, mother language. Like we think each child should learn from their mother. And so women's group also promote our elementary school to provide language class from Southeast Asia and the South Asia to learn from their mother's tongue. However, I guess most families will prefer their children not to learn from their mother or migrant spouses. Or migrant spouses will be asked not to teach her own child at home regarding their native language. And this is one thing, the cultural stigma. And the second one is, because their educational background, they receive their education in their own country. And when they came to Taiwan, it is challenging for them to find a job, corresponding to her educational background. So most of them are doing some low-paid jobs. So there, this is another another challenging issues for them right now. And also, we already have two migrant spouses who become politicians. So I will say we are still in the process to gain their full citizenship. Okay.
Thank you, Weiting. We have a question from Cynthia Zan who asks, what are the factors contributing to the withdrawal of women from workforce as they age after the peak of 25 to 29 group?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and it's also a challenge for women's groups in Taiwan to think about the solution. The main reason is that the how to say, I forgot the English, how to say 托育.
You mean childcare?
Childcare, okay. So the childcare service, the service for childcare, or the support for childcare, the system to support childcare is quite weak in Taiwan. So it's very expensive to find babysitters and in Taiwan. So comparing to their salaries, like in Taiwan, we will spend let me calculate in the US dollars. So we will spend like 600 US dollars per month for babysitter. And our basic salary, monthly basic salary is only around 900 US dollars in Taiwan right now. So for families, they are like middle or low income family. They will comparing women's monthly salary with the cost for babysitting, and they will ask young females to come back home and take care of your children. So this is the first reason, because of we do not have enough public system for childcare or yeah. And the second reason is that still families in Taiwan or the society in Taiwan will think it's better for a mother to take care of her children. Then her child will get a good, good care or a better care comparing to, asking fathers to go back home. So it's the situation. So I will say there are two main reasons. The first one is our insufficient or lack of public support, and the second one is our culture. Our cultural stereotypes. Yeah.
Thank you. So I think Cynthia's question leads to Navita Chenheng Wang's question about Taiwan having one of the lowest birth rates in the world. And Navita was wondering if this phenomenon is related to the role of gender in Taiwan, and if you see changes in the area in the future.
Yeah. Yes, you are right. It is related. And so right now, women's groups are trying to several ways. First one, of course, we are promoting the public support system for childcare. And the second one is that we are trying to use policies to encourage fathers to share childcare. Like, for example, right now, if father apply, so what I talk about the parental leave subsidies, in the past you can only get 60% of your salary when you apply for parental leave but right now you can get 80%, so it's 20% increases, and these increases encourage fathers because they usually have a higher salaries compared to their spouses. So these increases encourage fathers to apply for parental leave. And secondly, we just passed a law and not amended the law of the Gender Equality Act in employment. So we just amended one article that we have 2 days vacation for fathers if they want to accompany their wives for the how to say it? It's a pregnant examination. When women got pregnant, they need to go to see the doctors. And right now, we encourage fathers to accompany their spouses. Yeah.
Thank you, Weiting. We have time for one last question, and even though we have multiple questions in our Q&A, but I think they all overlap, so I'm just going to combine all the questions together. And it's more of like a two-part question, which is that one is that Taiwan seems to have progressed a lot in gender equality from a state level, but not so much on the interpersonal level as it pertains to the family system. And actually, this question from our audience is very related to the research I conduct as well. In my own research, I show that despite gender progress in Taiwan, which has been significant in comparison to other countries in the region, as well as some Western democracies, but there's still a disconnect between political status of women, right, which you've shown earlier about how women are heavily represented in Taiwan. But there's still a disconnect between women's political status and women's social status. So why do you think that is? And also, there's also always that question that our participants are always wondering, right? Then what are the recommendations? What are the solutions? So could you offer any thoughts on that, both why that is and if there's any way we could mitigate that? So I think we have some time to answer that one last question.
Yeah, I think Confucianism or our culture is a main reason why we found disconnected between policies and society. I guess my solution, or I will say it will be a solution for this situation will be gender equity education. So we actually have an act for gender equity education since 2004. However, it's also an education affected by the patriarchy society. So initially, in this act, we ask our schools from kindergarten up to universities need to provide gender equality educations to all students. And the topic including, transgender, different sexualities, and also teach about how to respect other people and deal with sexual harassment or sexual assault in schools. However, the patriarchy society thinks it's an attack to our so-called traditional values. So they were very they attacked these. They even initiated how to say it, referendum for the whole society to vote to block courses regarding homosexuality in schools. So you can see the huge struggle in Taiwan, the society versus gender equity movement. Yeah, and of course, culture affects people's thinking regarding their gender roles. So it's very challenging for women's group or for gender movement to encounter the traditional stereotypes.
Thank you so much for waiting for your engaging responses to the questions from our audience. I apologize we are not able to take all the questions because a few more actually just came in. Because of the time constraint, we're not able to take them all. But thank you all so much for being with us today. I'm going to hand back over to Shi Chen, who will over concluding remarks for today's session. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Liu, for your wonderful moderation.
Thank you, Dr. Liu. Yeah, and I'm sorry to cut the discussion short, but I believe gender and marriage equality in Taiwan and worldwide will be an issue that we'll keep paying attention to continuously. And thank you, Dr. Liu and Dr. Wu again for this wonderful talk and event. And I would also like to show my sincere appreciation for our co-sponsors, Center for the Study of Women, LGBTQ Campus Resource Center, Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion at UCLA. Thank you all for participating in this meaningful dialogue. And here's also a reminder that there are some great upcoming events related to Taiwan studies hosted by the Asia Pacific Center, including a talk delivered by me in March. So hope to see you all again in our future events. Thank you. And please have a wonderful night or morning. Thank you.